Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Politics. First, the highlights. Chairman ECOWAS and Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu approves return of delegation of Islamic leaders to Niger as more efforts are geared towards peaceful resolution. Leadership of the All Progressives Congress says plans are on to resolve amicably controversies trailing new officers to fill vacant National Working Committee and zonal positions. Plus, Bauchi State Governor urges Nigerian Air Force to assist the state with aerial surveillance of forests. Warm welcome to the program. I'm Millicent Walker in Lagos, and we begin with efforts towards a peaceful resolution of the political crisis in Niger Republic. The chairman of the regional bloc and president of Nigeria yesterday approved the return of a delegation of Islamic leaders to the country for talks with the junta. The decision was reached after President Bola Tinubu met with the clerics who were in the army 2 weeks ago for a dialogue with the coup leaders. Responding to the delegation against the backdrop of ethnic rumors peddled by domestic political figures inside and outside the country, President Tinubu emphasized that he is at the forefront of a peaceful resolution of the crisis, even in the midst of more hawkish individuals urging swifter intervention. He says, quote, "I'm managing a very serious situation. If you take ECOWAS aside, other people will react, those who are outside of our control. I am the one holding those sides back. I am the one holding back ECOWAS."
It's a customary reception accorded foreign visitors. This time, the red carpet is rolled out for 3 envoys. The ambassador of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, the ambassador of the Republic of Cuba, and the ambassador of the United Arab Emirates are at the villa to present their letters of credence to President Bola Tinubu. In a side meeting with the ambassador of Ethiopia, President Bola Tinubu said African countries have a better chance of overcoming economic and security challenges by looking inward for solutions and walking the talk on all its commitments. Meeting the UAE ambassador, the president directed that issues affecting relations with the Emirates airline and the issuance of visas to Nigerians should be immediately resolved, emphasizing that he stands prepared to personally intervene. The president also met with a delegation of Islamic scholars who had previously engaged with the military junta in Niger Republic in a bid to resolve the ongoing political crisis. The Minister of Information and the leader of the delegation speak on the outcome of the meeting.
Dialogue will continue. Mr. President, as the head of ECOWAS, is interested in pursuing a peaceful resolution of this crisis. But like I said, nothing is off the table. Mr. President has said he should continue to engage, and the ulamas will continue to do that.
We are still going back there to ensure that through amicable way, through peaceful way, as spiritual leaders, we'll be able to do and contribute what we can be able to do. What we want is we don't want war. We want peace to reign in our region.
The leadership of the Nigerian Bar Association also met with the president, thanking him for the choice of the Minister of Justice and other members of the bar in his administration.
The bar, under my leadership, by the special grace of God, will support the Honorable Attorney General in the discharge of his constitutional responsibility in this administration. And we similarly did for the Chief of Staff. He's also a member of the Nigerian Bar Association. The Scope is also a member of the Nigerian Bar Association. So you can see that the president is surrounded by lawyers, and no doubt what we expect is actually something that will do us proud, not only as members of the Nigerian Bar Association, but as a nation.
The NBA president advocated the Attorney General's intervention in the review of the conditions of service and welfare of serving judges in the country, amongst other judicial reforms. From the presidential villa, Lanre Lasese, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, sanctions by the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, are not just threatening Niger's food and medical supplies, they're also taking a toll on the movement of people and goods from neighboring countries. While the World Food Programme, WFP, and the UN Children's Agency, UNICEF, say they have no plans to cut back operations in Niger, they're warning that time is running out. Here's the situation report.
The Malville border crossing in northern Benin is one of the busiest in West Africa. Trucks with food, humanitarian aid and industrial materials usually flow freely into neighboring Niger, one of the world's poorest countries. However, the border is at a standstill. A line of thousands of trucks stretch back 25 kilometers from the muddy shores of the Niger River that marks the frontier. Drivers stranded for weeks hang their clothes between trucks. Away from border guards, petty traders pile goods into wooden boats to cross the rain-lashed river. The backlog is one of the clearest signs yet of the impact of sanctions imposed by regional bloc ECOWAS on Niger after a military coup on July the 26th. The blockade is meant to pressure the junta to restore President Mohamed Bazoum to office. Drivers at the border appear to be preparing for a long wait. Some have erected makeshift tents and cook on little charcoal stoves. Others are scrounging for food as their money runs out. Nigerian trucker Suleiman, who has been stuck at the border with his cargo of sugar and oil for over 20 days, laments his experience.
Nobody came to ask about our health. We don't know whether we've been taken hostage or what. We're Africans. We are Nigerians.
According to the United Nations, some 6,000 tons of goods from the United Nations World Food Programme are stocked outside Niger, including cereals, cooking oil and food for malnourished children. UNICEF containers are also stranded at the border and in Benin's Cotonou port. While residents say there's still food on the shelves of Niamey, however, prices have shot up since sanctions were announced. The price of rice has increased by 21%.
The situation must not be allowed to drag on for so long as to damage the countries directly affected by this decision.
There's also concern that the impasse could begin to affect Benin's port-centric economy, especially in border areas like Malville, where jobs, prices and opportunities are closely linked to the movement of people and goods.
Well, here's the timeline of major events that have followed the 3 weeks since the democratically elected president, Mohamed Bazoum, was ousted in Niger. It began July 26. Niger's presidential palace was sealed off that fateful day. The country's presidential guard, the section of the military meant to protect Mr. Bazoum, surrounded the presidential palace. The soldiers detained Bazoum, denying him access to his office and residence. That same day, the AU, ECOWAS, condemned the coup attempt, and later that day, Nigerian soldiers announced the coup, warning against foreign intervention. July the 27th saw countries who began to call in support of democracy. The United States, France, the United Nations strongly condemning the military takeover of the country and calling for Mr. Bazoum's immediate release. Of course, we saw protests later that day in the capital city, Niamey. July 28th, 48 hours after the coup, General Abdourahmane Tiani declared himself Niger's new head of state. He was the head of the presidential guard that held Mr. Bazoum hostage at the presidential palace. He announced that himself as head of state on account of bad governance and also worsening security. July the 30th, ECOWAS gave the Nigerian junta 1 week deadline to reinstate Mr. Bazoum, threatening force. It also put out sanctions, which include a closure of all the land and air borders, some of which we've seen in that story a short while ago. July the 31st, Burkina Faso and Mali joined forces with Niger, and that solidarity came in as the countries warned ECOWAS against any further interventions that would jeopardize the spirit of Pan-Africanism. At the beginning of August, Russia advised against ECOWAS military intervention, and this was despite the Wagner approval. Same day, Abdul Salami-led ECOWAS delegation arrived Niger in company of the Sultan of Sokoto and the president of ECOWAS. They were not successful. That was also the same day Nigeria was said to have cut off electricity to the country. The next day, foreign countries began to evacuate citizens, including France, Italy, Spain, Germany, the United Kingdom. We also saw later the U.S. pausing certain aids to Niger, when Niger, in retaliation, also withdrew ambassadors from Nigeria and France. And as the ECOWAS deadline neared, ECOWAS chair wrote to the National Assembly about the military intervention in Niger Republic. August the 5th and 6th, we saw ECOWAS ask for international support. Nigerian citizens rallying support for coup leaders on the deadline day. August the 8th, we saw Niger's military reject a tripartite peace mission from ECOWAS, the AU, and the UN as well. The following day, Mr. Bazoum was denied access to food and medicine, and that was according to reports. Until later, that was lifted. August the 10th, ECOWAS ordered deployment of military standby force at its second meeting in the nation's capital, Abuja. And in a swift turn of events, August the 14th, the Niger military junta said Mr. Bazoum would face prosecution for a number of reasons. And that's bringing us to the latest position of ECOWAS, with Nigeria's president and ECOWAS chair sending Islamic leaders again to Niger Republic for dialogue. Well, we move away from the situation in Niger now to South Africa, where the Vice President, Senator Kashim Shettima, says the reality of achieving the 2030 Agenda for the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, remains bleak for many developing countries. He is emphasizing the need to foster global economic governance reform that enhances the representation and voice of emerging market economies. He stated this while addressing world leaders yesterday at the third BRICS Africa Outreach and BRICS Plus dialogue on the sidelines of the BRICS Summit that wraps up in Johannesburg today.
It is needless to add that Nigeria is Africa's largest economy, and with a population of 220 million people, is undoubtedly the most populous country in Africa. Mr. Chairman, as we approach the target completion date of the Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals, the reality of achieving the SDGs remain bleak for many countries, especially developing ones. Based on 1, harnessing the agricultural potential of our nations; 2, harnessing renewable energy to revolutionize Africa; 3, fostering technology, innovation and job prospects for holistic and equitable progress; 4, collaborative efforts on climate change and nature-centered approaches to development; 5, strengthening vibrant private sector participation among countries of the global south; and 6, nurturing youth employment and skill building as a deterrent against terrorism, organized crime and related challenges; 7, proactive crisis management and heightened resilience; and lastly, promoting proactive involvement of business leadership in shaping and improve an ideal landscape for trade and economic exchanges in the global south.
Well, to other issues now. In Lagos, the State House of Assembly confirmed 22 of the 31 nominees sent by the Governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, as commissioners. Well, that has been generating loads of reaction since. Well, among those not confirmed are former Commissioner for Information, Mr. Gbenga Motosho, and also former Commissioner for Health, Professor Akin Abayomi. The Speaker of the House, who presided over that day's sitting, said the confirmation followed rigorous and detailed screening of the nominees by an ad hoc committee led by the Chief Whip of the House. Well, we have to talk more about this and, you know, the reactions trailing this particular story. Mr. Nelson Ekudrumi, he's a political affairs analyst. He joins me here in Lagos. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Have you seen anything like this, the rejection of 17 nominees sent by a governor to the House?
Well, in Lagos, it's unprecedented. And, you know, like you rightly said, it has generated a lot of public concerns that, you know, what could have, you know, transpired in the House. And as we speak, Lagosians are still asking questions from the State House of Assembly that what is, you know, going on. Because you look at the caliber of some of these nominees that were not confirmed. You talk about Mr. Agbenga Motosho, the Commissioner for Information and Strategy, who has, you know, done, you know, tremendously well while in office. You talk about the Professor Akin Abayomi, whom we are all aware of the role he played during the, you know, COVID-19. So Lagosians are asking questions, and we can only hope that the State Assembly will have a rethink, you know, on their decision in collaboration with the executive, so that we can put this behind us and, you know, the will of government can roll up, you know, in full steam.
Looking at some of the reasons given, they're saying the screening was detailed. However, some others have said maybe there was some politicking that went on. We have, for example, someone who alleged that most of them are friends of the governor, and that includes the Commissioner for Health, whom you've just mentioned, and that he's not necessarily, you know, he has no political base. That's been one reason.
Well, anybody in Lagos who must have, you know, participated in the electoral process must be a good friend of the governor, you know. And I don't think that will be a yardstick, you know, for saying somebody cannot be, you know, nominated as a commissioner. There are, you know, several factors that have to be considered. There are several interests that will compete, you know, but by and large, you expect that whether you are a friend of the governor or not, the larger interests of the society, which the governor, you know, aims to drive at, should be the uppermost, you know, considerations for the Assembly Committee. So that is why you look at, if, for example, are you telling me Mr. Agbenga Motosho is a friend of the governor in view of his performance? Absolutely not. You know, but, you know, we expect that in the composition of the Lagos cabinet as a state of excellence, that, you know, the uppermost consideration will be, you know, merit, you know, the capacity and the capability of the, you know, nominees to deliver, taking into consideration that, you know, we're in the era of politics, and you cannot take that away, you know, in taking any decision that regards governance.
And this is the governor's last term. But then when you look at all of this, do you think that there was some sort of, when you look at the composition, the diversity of the nominees, was ethnicity taking into consideration, gender as well? Was it all representative?
I believe the list has taken care of this, you know, indices that you have mentioned. But maybe in the wisdom of the legislators, it didn't capture it well enough. Don't forget that the legislator have the responsibility to screen these nominees. And you expect that the legislature, before coming up with their recommendations or this decision, would have interfaced with the executive privately in order to save us, you know, this public hula baloo about this issue. So with regards to the interest taken care of, I believe strongly that the women were represented. You talk about, you know, other factors like the political considerations. I also believe that that is an issue, you know, that would have been represented, but knowing fully well that in democracy, even if we're in the same party, it doesn't mean we should all sleep and think in the same direction. There's bound to be differences because we all join the political party, you know, to express our own political, you know, desires.
Do you see these differences affecting that relationship, cordial relationship that the executive and legislature should have for the governance of a state?
I think what has happened will be a wake-up call for them to look at, you know, their relationship and see how they can, you know, improve on it, because what has really, you know, played out is that, you know, all is not well within that relationship. And, you know, in view of the fact that Lagos has no other role to play than, to continue to be the pace setter. And for me, one of the things that has come out from this whole issue is that those who have continued to lampoon the legislature as rubber stamp, I hope they will hit their words now, that, the legislature is affirming its authority. So for me, I think the larger interest of the state should be uppermost in the minds of the legislature. I
want to take you up on something, and this is, the national level. The persons living with disabilities have threatened to sue the president, saying that they were marginalized. In fact, they say the list of not including, one of them in his cabinet is discriminatory.
Well, I wouldn't subscribe to that, because I wouldn't know the premise under which they will be filing that action, because the Nigerian Constitution does not give rights to a particular set of people. The Nigerian Constitution recognizes all Nigerians, no matter your conditions. If they are looking at themselves as people with disabilities, the Nigerian Constitution does not see them that way. The Nigerian Constitution sees them first and foremost as Nigerians who have rights. But they can be rest assured that the administration will not put in place any policy that will infringe on their right. Even as we speak, we have seen government agencies come up with policies, that promotes the rights of people with disabilities. You can see what happened during the elections. It has become part of an electoral process that people with disabilities can easily access the polling stations. They avail some necessary tools to make them also perform their function. So I don't want to believe that, the people with disabilities are being marginalized. They can be rest assured that any society that wants to develop and, hold its head high in the Committee of Nations treats, or places premium on persons who are vulnerable. And the people with disabilities are one.
Indeed, we'll see how that pans out in the coming days. We'd like to thank you, Mr. Nelson Ekujumi, for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, we continue talking security now, where the Bauchi State Governor Bala Mohammed has urged the Nigerian Air Force to assist the state with aerial surveillance of the forests, which he says have been overtaken by bandits. The governor fears that the state is becoming vulnerable to banditry, and air support will assist greatly in reducing the menace. The governor made the appeal to the Air Officer Commanding Special Operations, Bauchi, Air Vice Marshal Enelbong Effiom, when he led a delegation on a courtesy visit to Bauchi State Government House.
On behalf of myself and the government of Bauchi State, the situation is so bad that the activities of the armed forces in Dampara and other places is making our most secure state to be vulnerable. Bandits are coming here in numbers, and they appear to be overwhelming us by the power and the persistence that they are showing. We really need your constant surveillance so that you can frighten them to leave our places. We are working with you and the other members of the security agencies, but certainly we need your own, because you will be able to do it better than the ground forces. But certainly your upper cover is always very apt for us. We seek your assistance to please, even if we are not going there with the ground forces, for you to carry out periodic flights over those places.
And it's another fight, this time against frustration, hunger and starvation, as the fuel subsidy removal continues to bite hard on residents of the state. The Taraba State Governor, Agbu Kefas, is soliciting assistance from stakeholders. The governor is insisting that only a strong collaboration of all will wipe away the tears of vulnerable citizens.
I want every politician, every leader, every Taraban businessman to join the government to see how we can make life better for our people. Once again, I want to thank all of you. For those of you that are collecting these food stocks, please make sure it gets to other people. Share it with your neighbors. In this difficult time we find ourselves, this is the time that we need every stakeholder to look at the situation the people are passing through, as a result of subsidy removal, and also removed from their own post to assist the needy people that are very poor. When you eat and other people cannot eat, you will not be comfortable if you have conscience. It is very important that those of us in leadership position to be very sensitive to the cry and need of the people.
Well, they say sharing is caring after all. And we move on to party politics now, where amidst controversies over the announcement of names of officers to fill vacant National Working Committee and zonal positions of the All Progressives Congress, the national chairman of the party, Mr. Abdullahi Ganduje, is assuring party faithful that all differences will be resolved. He stated this during a meeting held behind closed doors with the governor of Kogi State in Abuja. Mr. Ganduje explains that the issue is a family matter. Governor Yahaya Bello, on his part, reaffirmed his confidence in the leadership of the party and APC's chances in the November 2023 governorship election in Kogi State.
This is democracy in action. It's an internal problem. We assure you that it will be resolved and it will be a win-win situation. We are already together. Since you saw people in the office now, they are there for dialogue, and we assure you very soon we'll be in Kogi State and we'll spend some days in order to see that everything is in order. The governor of Kogi State is a very hard-working young man, and we believe he did it before, he will do it again.
I don't think you heard the name of anybody being pronounced by the chairman. You didn't hear the name of anybody being pronounced by the National Publicity Secretary of the party. No official statements. I am not aware of any. And there's no any official communication from the NWC to me as the leader of the party. And of course, we discussed about our next election in Kogi State and areas that we need to address and what we need to do so that we win. Remember, this is going to be his first election as national chairman of this great party. So, and we have a very good understanding. And we're planning that the National Campaign Council will be constituted and will be inaugurated very soon. And he is bringing innovation into the Campaign Council this time around. And definitely, we're very sure and confident of victory with moon slide by the grace of God.
You've been served lunch on Lunchtime Politics. Hope you enjoyed it. Many thanks for watching. I'm Millicent Walker. Bye for now.